Hello, welcome to the webinar on Splunk conf24 highlights, everything you want to know about what's new or due in Splunk. My name is Ben Marrable. I'm a senior security strategist here at Somerford Associates. Just a couple of points really. There are forward-looking statements within this deck of slides. So as such, don't buy any stocks or shares or anything in Splunk because of what I'm saying today or what has been announced at .conf for the future. I'll just start with the major announcements really. So one of the first things that they announced in the keynote was that they've produced a new Splunk report into the total cost of downtime, estimating that organizations lose a lot of money due to downtime, surprisingly amount. In fact, 9% of revenue really is the sort of headline figures. So something to read into that they've announced. The other thing that obviously the buzz is AI. So there's 3 different AI assistants, sort of 4 really. One for SPL, which allows you to produce SPL, one for enterprise security in terms of response plays, and one's for observability in terms of workflows with that as well, and ITSI configurations. There is now a new ingest processor to go along with edge processor. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail. There is now federated analytics to go along with federated search. Federated analytics is near real-time searches of external data sources such as Amazon Security Data Lake. There is a new ES coming, 8.0 in September. And this is a big transformation which we'll go into. There's also a couple of new products, asset and risk intelligence and agent management as well. So a couple of really interesting new products that they've announced as well. So let's first start with the big acquisition. Splunk is now a Cisco company. Their messaging was that Cisco and Splunk is now better together. And they gave a lot of good points as reasons for that. One of the first things that they said that got a huge cheer from the crowd was they won't screw it up. Splunk is really really important to Cisco, it seemed, and they really wanted to just get the message that they're not going to screw up Splunk. Splunk is still going to be great. Splunk is still going to be Splunk. What they are going to do is a lot of integrations with Hypershield, Thousand Eyes, App Dynamics with the observability suite, XDR. I can imagine the tightness between this and the SIEM, and enterprise security, and also Talos. Talos is going to go into Attack Analyzer, ES, and SOAR. So Talos is a threat data feed really. So that's been announced. That's going to be free for ES customers, SOAR customers, Attack Analyzer customers as well, which is great news. So that's really a win for Splunk customers, really. So those are the kind of key things that we're seeing from Cisco's perspective from this acquisition of Splunk. So lots of integrations really between the two. I'm going to start with the new things for the Splunk platform. So one of the first things is Enterprise 9.3. Splunk Enterprise 9.3 is coming soon. There's a few sort of tweaks to the launcher in terms of graphical interaction with the UI in Splunk. So we're now going to be able to have bookmarks to external links, all sorts of different things. It's going to be kind of a home page when you go into Splunk. It's also going to show your search history across all your apps within that launcher application. There's some updates to Dashboard Studio. We're able to now schedule email exports, shared tokens, multiple drill downs. We even get rounded corners to our panels that exist within Dashboard Studio. So a nice few little tweaks there. We've mentioned it already, the Splunk AI Assistant for SPL. This was launched last year at .conf23, or at least in preview mode then. So it's really the being able to customize SPL, write SPL, understand SPL, that side of things, and the Splunk Federation capabilities. So they've increased Splunk to Splunk capabilities, so the ability to search one Splunk from another Splunk, whether that's Splunk Cloud, Splunk On-Prem, all that sort of things. Federated search, being able to search to S3, Amazon S3, that was announced again last year. Federated Analytics now is a new one, which we'll mention a few times, being able to use our AWS Security Lake, or the data lake really, to analyze stuff in sort of view detections and so forth. There's also been a few performance improvements. So the table commands improved, there's better stability, reduced memory consumption, improved memory footprint of Splunk services across the board really. We can now do an index cluster rolling upgrade automatically. So we can do a search air cluster and rolling upgrades where we kind of minimize downtime for doing a search air cluster. We should be able to minimize downtime here for an index cluster, which is great news. If you're on-prem, we can do there's a couple of new dashboards for Splunk administration. So we've got an overview dashboard of Splunk Health. We've got workload dashboard, including SVC usage, that sort of things. Those will really help with the sort of transition to Splunk Cloud as well. So we're going to get to see more data at your fingertips, really. And also Python 3.9 is coming as default. Couple of things on Splunk Cloud, really. Splunk Cloud's now going to Microsoft Azure. We heard about the partnership last year between Splunk and Microsoft. Now they're announcing general availability, limited availability of Splunk Cloud on Microsoft Azure. So if that is your Microsoft house and you want to have Splunk Cloud, you can move to Microsoft Azure. That also includes ES and ITSI offerings as well. They've also been given FedRAMP High in the States. So if you have any connection to the States and need FedRAMP government kind of support, that's good to know. And cross-region disaster recovery on AWS. So more and more Splunk is becoming a key production system. So the ability to have cross-region disaster recovery, if Splunk needs to be up all the time between two different AWS regions, is now possible, or at least in private preview. The AI assistant for SPL. So yeah, a little bit more on this. So it's a generative AI assistant, think ChatGPT, but essentially it's specifically written for SPL. It doesn't take any of your searches that you're doing and put it into the sort of the context. It's not taking your data to build the generative AI assistant, but it can be using that data to kind of give you details around what that actually means, it's got access to the full knowledge base of Splunk, so it can go into the cloud and grab things from Splunk Answers and everywhere else as suggestions of what you want to be doing. So you can ask it questions and queries. How can I run stream stats? How does that work? That sort of thing. And you've got bi-directional translation between SPL and human language, which is good. They've got a new branding for data management, but there are a couple of new really important things to kind of note about this. The gold standard for technology add-ons been out for a little while, a few months now, I think. There's a white paper on what is a gold standard TA, where they're trying to standardize and make sure that technology add-ons for different vendors conform to a certain standard. So there's pillars there. There's a big doc on that you can find on the internet. There's now data pipelines management. So there's a single pane really to kind of control data pipelines for Splunk Edge Processor and Splunk Ingest Processor, which I'll go into in the next couple of slides. And then one that I found quite interesting is agent management. And this is a really interesting one about controlling your universal fleet. So more than what the deployment server does right now in terms of just telling it what to ingest, but you can actually now update universal forwarders and can see whether the data is flowing correctly, data quality health. So I think that's a very exciting development that hopefully we'll see very soon. If not coming out, it is due to come out. When it comes out, we will see, but will be a good one. So last year we did talk about Splunk Edge Processor. This is always sitting at the edge. It provides filtering, masking, and routing capabilities, right? So it can control what's going into Splunk from the edge. It's using SPL2, new language. Really, it comes with no additional cost to a Splunk license. You can just run it at the edge and start filtering what data you want to send to Splunk. But now that we've got the Splunk Ingest Processor, so this works in the cloud. All right, so this is a Splunk Cloud process. It does log summarization, so you might be getting thousands of errors or something like that. Do you want all thousands of those logs? Well, maybe you want to summarize it into just saying, I've got 5 errors in this 5-minute window, or suddenly I've got 100 errors in this 5-minute window, right? So you can summarize those logs, you can aggregate those logs and use the metrics from those. So you can think of any of the sort of aggregated use cases to reduce the amount of data that's flowing into Splunk, and also then route that data that you do want either to the metrics index, because you've got a metric for it, which allows you to do things very rapidly, or send it to S3 in a Parquet format, so a good tabular format, or of course into observability cloud. So we've got different routing options as well. So it can hit the Splunk ingest processor, and then you can decide where you want to send that data, whether that's into a Splunk metrics index, or indeed, of course, into an events index, whatever you need to do. But you can do transformations on the data as it flows to Splunk Cloud, which is exciting. This is, again, no additional cost to Splunk license, and it's coming soon to Victoria Experience in selective regions. So you need to be on Victoria Experience. If you don't know what that is for Splunk Cloud, do reach out. We can go into details. It's in select regions, but it should be coming to the main Europe soon. So that's Splunk platform, Splunk Enterprise, Splunk Cloud. Let's talk about security now. Obviously, where I sit, if you don't know, I'm a cybersecurity strategist, so I do a lot of my work in this area. So I'm very excited about a few things. One of the first things that I'm very excited about is ES 8.0. This is probably the biggest update in years to enterprise security. There's been a lot of incremental updates. You know, we've had risk-based alerting and all sorts of different things, but I can't remember a huge update like this for several years now. So what they're going to do, they're going to have improved case management. Now, they're going to do this by using a single surface. So they're going to bring mission control straight into enterprise security, right? So mission control did a webinar earlier in the year about it. It was announced last year. It's a new way of kind of responding or doing case management within Splunk, and it came with Splunk Enterprise Security to Splunk Cloud users. Now it's going to be embedded into enterprise security, as well as the TIM, threat intelligence management, is going to be embedded too. With mission control, always had native SOAR integration. It was always able to integrate to SOAR. You could have an automation step where you just click on it and it'll run a particular playbook or particular action. Now that's all going to be embedded into enterprise security. Incident review is now mission control, really. And so we have this one single unified work surface where you can run searches, you can go through processes, you can tag in and pull in events, you can do the automation, you can see the threat intelligence, what it's saying about it. This will integrate with Talos, of course, because Cisco Talos is going to come with it. So there's a lot of good stuff that's going to come here. We've got new taxonomy now, so we're going to be using our naming conventions and everything else, and our standard Splunk terminology is going to change ever so slightly to align to the open cybersecurity schema framework, which has been out for about a year, with Splunk being one of the sort of forefront of that and founders of that. So trying to standardize across all cybersecurity tools and technologies, which is great. And that's not all. We've also, in ES 8.0, we're going to have correlation rules. They're now going to be referred to as findings. Okay, findings, because it makes more sense, that sort of open framework. You're going to get two types of findings, or correlation rules still, if you want to use that terminology. You can have intermediate findings, things like what we used to have as risk rules, or full findings. So, you know, direct notables, as they were, atomic notables. So we're going to have those two different things. And now we're going to have finding groups. So you can think of this as what was RBA, what sequence analysis was, where it was grouping particular intermediate findings in this world together and saying this is a group of findings that would dictate being a particular thing. Okay, so we can make sure that we can detect now, and that's all going to be turnkey. Oh, a lot of it's going to be turnkey. There's going to be more findings out of the box, really, which is going to be exciting. Another really big thing that sort of has been kind of overlooked is the actual versioning now of correlation rules. So not only when you see a finding, where you see something, actually a notable event come in, you can look at that notable event and you can see the correlation search or the finding that was under the hood, and you can see the version history of that. You can see maybe the correlation search has changed in the last day, and now you've got an alert, maybe there was an issue with that. You could go and research the previous version history of that. So you can see more of, you know, issues with the actual analytic logic as opposed to just issues with the underlying events as well, which is really good. But also being able to go back versions or so forth, really good with correlation rules and so forth. We've also got federated analytics, spoken about that before, but now we can obviously do Amazon Data Lake, run detections using that, and that includes the ability to use native Splunk knowledge objects and data model support as well. So not all security data needs to now hit Splunk to be able to use in your SIEM and to be able to analyze that data. You could be sending stuff that's not so rapidly used or not so relevant into the Amazon Data Lake. So this, for huge customers, can be a big win because it can save a lot of money on your Splunk license, which is great. The ES AI assistant, right? So the SPL AI assistant, now we can actually answer analyst questions within the workflow. So you can see now the actual, this is what mission control is going to look like within enterprise security. And you can see that's actually an enterprise security application, and you've got mission control within that. And on the right, you've got the ability to just go, right, well, I've seen this, what would I do about it? Right, so you can ask those questions. So for an analyst, certainly a level 1, level 2 analyst even, doesn't necessarily know how to respond to something, you can use the AI assistant to guide you, right? So that can save you a lot of time, so save you searching the internet, all sorts of different great wins there. I can see that being very useful. And another new product that I'm really excited about, because I talk a lot about assets and identities, now we have a new product to kind of tell us all about this, which is Asset and Risk Intelligence, or ARI for short, ARI. It's in early access right now. It's all about actually scanning the data that you have and discovering assets, right? So it continuously does asset discovery and will tell you what assets you have. It will update that asset inventory, right? So once it's got a track of that asset, it will know if it changes IP address, it will know when it changed IP address, so you can have tracking of that IP. It will enrich, enhance asset records with software vulnerabilities, right? So software that's deployed on it, vulnerabilities, it can use these data models to be able to use that and say, look, this asset's got this software, this asset's got these vulnerabilities. That's really powerful. Obviously, it's tightly integrated with ES frameworks, so you can pull out of it the asset list, the identity list that can be used within risk-based alerting, all that side of things. And it's got bi-directional CMDB integration, currently just for ServiceNow, but that's really exciting too. So if there's something you see in Splunk that you want to adapt to that particular asset, you can go and push that information down into the CMDB as well. So I think this is very exciting when it comes, which is soon, hopefully. And then finally, a couple of other things around security, right? SOAR 6.3 is coming out. It's got external user response driven automation. This is what we mean by this is really the ability to interact with maybe your finance team to say, oh, hold on, your email address is, you've got a phishing email here. Are you happy for me to delete it or something else? The ability to go and interact with people that aren't natively using SOAR, aren't the security team, and just say to them, look, this is what's happened. Are you happy to take action on your account, or or to whatever needs to happen? So you can guide that in that sense as well. We've also got more guided automation, so AI within that to kind of give you direction of how to write playbooks, which is really good. And then Attack Analyzer, really one of the key things that they kind of showed is it's here, right? Attack Analyzer is here. Do have a look at it. What they've been doing with Attack Analyzer since Splunk's taken ownership of it is really integrations, right? Much like Cisco is doing with Splunk, but there's now a Splunk app for Splunk Attack Analyzer and a Splunk Attack Analyzer for Splunk SOAR, which is built in so they can connect together. Kind of the key things to focus on there. Okay, that was a lot on security. So let's not forget some observability and that side of things. So the observability cloud, one of the key things that that they wanted to push is really the integration between Splunk Cloud and Splunk Observability Cloud. Now we can get visualized IAM and APM data within Splunk Cloud. So you're natively searching in Splunk Cloud, you can see what Observability Cloud is saying about your applications and so forth, which is really good. We now have, and it's been launched, APM service-centric views, right? So we can actually look into those services themselves and get complete view of what that service is doing in a bit more sort of centric view as it's in the middle. Access centralized data dashboard as well, so kind of key things there. Cisco App Dynamics, Splunk Observability Suite, that integration is going to be really key between the two. They're going to make sure that they're as uniform as possible and they sit as close as possible together. SLL monitoring for Splunk Observability Cloud, so this is the ability to kind of do service level objectives while you're creating, visualizing, alerting into business priorities. So as you create services, it will give you kind of service levels that it would expect everything to be at, and so kind of make it easier to sort of build and do that service decomposition process that you need to do to understand what all your services are. We've also now got archived metrics, so the ability to define whether metrics are critical and should be going to Splunk's Observability Cloud, or if maybe they're less relevant or less critical, they could go to a colder storage. So no longer do you have to go on a kind of cost, this is going to cost too much, but you could send it to a colder storage. So if you want to historically go and look at the metrics that were occurring at that time, you could go back and look at that. It's just stored on slower disk. So if you're not doing things in real time, that can be a really good win. It's actually a 90% saving on cost was the quote that they stated, so it could be quite big. And the Service Sandbox is out now for ITSI, which was announced it was coming soon last year. It is out now, so that's good. So a few updates there. The AI assistant, of course, in Observability Cloud, really, it's really about making sure that you've got guided workflows about how to deal with your services, lowering mean time to detect, mean time to respond, and making it easier to understand what observability is, traces, metrics, and everything else. Asking it, kind of understanding from it. Use it as a fountain of knowledge. If you want to do internal knowledge transfer, you could just ask the AI assistant. It can be really good. Also, in alignment with that, let's just mention Splunk ITSI configuration assistant. So as you're configuring through making configuration changes in ITSI, you can do that Splunk ITSI configuration assistant as well. And I've got some links there for all the different things. There's a few blogs out there, what's new in Splunk platform, ES blog, observability blog, AI assistant, and also that information about the Open Cybersecurity Schema framework. So you can see all those different blog links there. Hopefully I'll stay on this page for a moment just so you can take a screen grab of those links in case you want to look for them. They're essentially start Splunk blogs, and then you could look for what's new in observability or so forth, and you'll find it if you Google it anyway. So just to know they're there, really. Otherwise, yeah, come to some more Splunk events in 2024. Lots of different things there. You go to summerfordassociates.com/events. You'll be able to see all the upcoming Splunk events that we have. So we've got ITSI showcases and so forth, and everything that's coming up in the future. Otherwise, thank you very much for jumping on this. This is a brief run through of .conf24 out in Vegas this year. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and you found something interesting. Do reach out to us if you want to have any questions or want to know a little bit more about any of those particular features that have been announced. info@summerfordassociates.com, or reach out to your account manager, and I'm sure we'll be able to have a further conversation